This is the day which the Lord has made. We will rejoice and will be glad in it. It's the 4th day of August in the year of our Lord 2020. I'm Jerry George. It's time for another edition of Early in the Morning, getting you information ready for the day ahead. Today's Tuesday, and it will be a thoughtful Tuesday brought to us this morning by a guest. But before that, let's just make sure that we actually have everything going and that we are broadcasting and doing so well. Yes, I see good signs that we are, and I hear good songs that we are, so we are broadcasting. So let's just do the share thing you need to do here. And yeah, that does it. So Rocky, Geraldine, Michael, Helen Ione, Aura, Lincoln, Eunice, Helen Richards, Peter Oliver. Again, thanks to all of you for joining us for another edition of Early in the Morning. Well, in our region, the weather seems to be nothing exciting out there at the moment. There would be some spotty weather during the course of today, but nothing really exciting. Still going to get warm. I could tell the humidity has been high for the last couple of days, and you get a couple of showers here and there. In St. Vincent, we have yet another day of holiday, so we had an extremely long weekend from Friday. Nothing happens commercially until tomorrow again in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're luckier in these COVIDous times. Yes, I'll win. Okay, so this morning, as we normally would do on a Tuesday, is we find something other than just plain news to talk about. And a couple of weeks ago, Sinclair came home. She said she had been into the city in St. George, and she told me a story that stuck with me. And when I thought what we would do for Early in the Morning, I asked her if she would share her story, because I thought it's something that we could use. And so after wringing her hand and stamping her toe and stuff like that, she agreed. So let me welcome her this morning to do for us this edition of Thoughtful Tuesday. Of Sinclair. Ring your hand and stamp it too.
Yes, and I see EVA equipment agree with me. They're struggling there to bring me in.
I think I have to change this mouse. It's misfiring too often now.
Okay. Well, good morning to you, and good morning to all of the people who gather for Early in the Morning. And
I'll step out of the frame, man. Okay, you go ahead.
And today is what we call Thoughtful Tuesday. And well, today is what Jerry George has dubbed Thoughtful Tuesday, the day when we reflect on personal things, when we make it personal, think about ourselves, think about how we approach life, how we look at things, how we deal with others. And when we say think of ourselves, how we deal with ourselves as well. Because sometimes we don't even think that we treat ourselves in certain kind of way. And how we treat ourselves is reflected on how we treat others. Now, I had this experience a few weeks ago where I went into the south of Grenada, going about my business. And as I was waiting to exit a minor road, I saw a gentleman. He was walking with crutches, but he was struggling. He could barely go. And he had not the regular type of crutches that you hold down the side, but the ones with the round top where you put your hand through the circles and support yourself through those circles, trying to give the feet some assistance. But he was really struggling. And as I sat there waiting on the traffic to get out of that minor road, I saw him struggling down the road. And eventually he just collapsed on the sidewalk. Not collapsed in a way where you faint and need smelling salts and things like that, but he just collapsed. the legs wouldn't go any further and they just gave out. And he sat there right on the side of the road. So I got out of my car, I went over to him and I said, "Sir, do you need some assistance?" And he said to me, "Well, I just want to get home." And I asked him, "Where is home?" He told me, and I recognized that it was right along the most popular bus route in Grenada. So I said to him, "But that's right on the bus route. Can you get a bus home?" And he said, "Well, if they have the fare, they can get the bus home." So I gave him money for the bus. And I said to him, "Can you get a bus from here?" Because he was a little distance away from the bus stop, maybe about 200 meters or so away from the bus stop. But it's because it's a popular area, the buses would come into that area to pick up passengers, because everyone would have to walk from there down to the bus stop. So the buses would often just come in and pick up the passengers, because for driving it is close, for walking it's about 200 meters. And when you're in a situation like that, gentleman, here, your legs just can't carry you, 200 meters is a long way to go. So he sat there and I tried to get a bus to pick him up, and none of the buses would stop. And he said to me, "Miss, this is what I was telling you," because he has a disability. And during that conversation with him, I recognized that he was also blind. And he said, because of his disability, the buses will not pick him up. I was literally bowled over. I said, "What?" I found it hard to believe. So I stood there with him for a bit, waving the buses, trying to get a bus to pick him up. They wouldn't pick him up. And he said, "Miss, you see what I tell you? I had some other business to do and I had to go. I didn't make him any promises, but I left. But he was on my mind. I went, I did my business, and all along he's on my mind. I'm thinking about him, whether or not he has gotten home." 1 hour later, approximately an hour later, when I finished what I was doing and I circled back, he was still there. But I saw some young men, and this is the good part of the story. About 3 young boys, the oldest one couldn't have been more than about 16 years old. They could have been anywhere from 14 to 16 years old, 3 young men. I saw them trying to help him up. So I stopped again and I said to them, "What you guys doing with him?" And they say, "We're trying to get him to the bus stop." And it's difficult for me to speak about it, really is. Because this man, he's visually impaired, he's blind. He also has problems with his legs, he can barely walk. And he's there in one of the most populous areas in Grenada. And people just going about their business, nobody see him. And I have to say nobody see him because it's like everybody's blind. They're just passing by. I stopped there and people are more upset because I stopped there and they have to drive around, you know. It caused a little bump in the traffic and people upset about that. But nobody noticed a man who is sitting there desperately in need of help. Desperately in need of help. And nobody sees him. They're going about their business and he just doesn't exist in their world. But when I saw those 3 young men trying to help him and the fact that they were so young, you know, it gave me hope. It gave me hope that there's a generation coming that is not as blind as the generation before. Because those three young men, I didn't ask them where they were coming from, where they were going, what their business were, but they saw someone in need and decided to offer assistance. And among the three of them, they were going to try to help him to get to the bus stop because really and truly he couldn't walk. So I told them to put him in the car, I'll drop him home. And these three young men, they were so happy, they were so excited. And they're like, Miss, you don't have a lot of people like you, you know. A lot of people wouldn't stop to help, you know, Miss. Thank you so much. And they were thanking me as if I was helping them personally. And I tell you, it warmed my heart and it swelled my heart. And we got him in the car with a little bit of difficulty, you know, and I decided to take him home. And we're chatting as we go along. He's telling me things and asking questions, and we're just there having a regular conversation. But all this time, I know he's blind. So I am trying to get him to give me directions about where to take him, but he's not bothering with me. We're just chatting. Eventually, going along the road, he said to me, when you get to the traffic light, turn right. I was shocked. And I'm like, how do you know where I am? And he told me the story of how being unable to see physically, he worked out a formula of knowing where he is. I was shocked. He said to me, Miss, I count the corners. I'm like, what? He said, yes. And that is how he knows where he is. He worked out his own formula. So I followed, instead of me trying to get directions from him, I followed his directions. And in giving me directions to where to take him, I couldn't tell that he couldn't see physically because it's just as if a person who is sighted was giving me directions. Look on the left, when you see the garage coming up, okay, there's a bench right beside the garage. You can stop right there. That is where I get off. I found it really, really funny. I had to laugh. I had a good time. I said, this is an experience I would not have had if I had not picked up this gentleman. Because I've seen people who are blind or otherwise visually impaired on the road all the time, going about their business with a white cane. And I never gave thought to how they really knew where they were, where to turn, where to get off, how they found their destination. But they work out a formula. They have their way of seeing. But then you have a society which is totally blind to them. You have people going about their business and these physically blind people are there. And those who are supposed to be able to see, they don't see them. They're too busy, you know, they're too important, they're too caught up in whatever they have to do to see another human being who may be struggling and needing a little help. The authorities in the country, they pay a lot of attention to who can take care of themselves, to the big businesses, to people who are able to go out and get a job. They're always making allowances, you know, for these people. And you see the society in general, the authorities in general, taking care of those who can take care of themselves. But the people who are physically disabled, who need a little extra assistance, they don't see them. So I asked myself the question, and I asked the question, who is really blind? Who are the blind out there? Certainly not just those who cannot see physically, because they have found a formula, they have found a way to connect with this world that they have to navigate on their own. In that space where those of us who can see don't even think about. My experience with that gentleman for the few minutes that it took me to drop him home, I learned so much from him. I really did. And it opened my eyes to an experience and to a way of life which is different and which really demands some attention from the rest of the society. Because after that, I got in touch with the Bus Association and I asked them, I said, is there any kind of protocol that you guys have for dealing with those people who are physically disabled, with the blind and with the elderly? Because in speaking with him, I found out that the elderly who travel on their own, who have to use the public bus system, also have that problem where the buses just don't want to bother with them. They leave them. So I got in touch with the Bus Association and I asked them, what is this all about? Why are these people being left behind on the road? And he said to me that sometimes the bus get ticketed for picking them up off the bus stop because they are slow and can't get to the bus stop and you stop to pick them up. They get a ticket. So the buses don't bother to stop and pick them up. When they're picking up able-bodied people, of course, they slow down, you jump on the bus and they go, and they don't stop long enough to get a ticket. But if you have to pick up someone who has a disability, who is blind, an elderly person, who can't run and jump on the bus when it is passing, then they have to stop and eventually they may get a ticket. So they avoid that. And like in the case of this blind gentleman that I dropped home, they may have to turn off the route. And it's not a far turn, it's less than a minute driving. You just turn off and drop him where he's going and you'll be back on your route, less than a minute. And he said, if they have to turn off route, they don't have to do that because they have this special fare that they charge when you have to turn off route. And a lot of these people who are out there, blind, elderly, when you see them out there by themselves like this, it's because of need. And that also is something else that came to me after this experience when I was speaking with another person who is blind, but his situation is different. And in my conversation with him, he said to me, he calls everyone citizen. He said, Citizen Sinclair, you know that since COVID, I have not been out on the street because I can't see people around me. I have to get close to them before I know they are there. So I can't social distance. So I don't go out on the street. I have not been out since COVID. And he said to me, any blind person you see out there now, it's because of need, Citizen Sinclair. And there's no way for them to stay home. They have to go out there. And I said to myself, wow. And we have these persons in our society and we don't see them. They don't exist in our world. They have to be out there trying to maneuver a world which is blind to them, trying to make do, to find the same food, the same clothing, the same needs and necessities that other people go after. They have to be out there in this world which is blind to them, trying to navigate it, to find the same necessities that we are so busy going after every day that we don't see them. And after speaking with this other gentleman whose situation is different so that he didn't have to go out, he could stay home. And I reflected on parts of the conversation that I was having with the blind gentleman that I took home. And he said to me that he does massage, he's a masseuse. And he told me, Miss, we used to go and we, because it's a group of them, the blind masseurs, he said, we used to go out and do the massage on the beach. You used to go and do the massage on the beach, but because the boats are not coming anymore, people, and by the boats, he mean the cruise ships not coming in anymore. So you find tourists not coming in, nobody coming in. So business is gone. But despite that knowledge, he still struggles. He can barely walk, he cannot see, but he has needs. So despite knowing about COVID-19, knowing that the cruise ships are not coming in, knowing that there are no tourists, he has needs. So he struggles, literally, physically struggles to go out because he needs to eat. He doesn't have anyone to take care of him. He needs to eat. And I really don't care what happened in his life before, because we have a way of saying, oh, he did this, he did that. It's because of this, it's because of that, it's because of whatever. None of us have the authority to judge another person like that. It doesn't matter what he did in his life, how many mistakes he made. It doesn't matter what brought him to the point where he has these disabilities and still has to navigate this world. He is as entitled as everybody else. So it's not for us to judge him and to judge others with disabilities, to judge people who are in difficult situation and to judge them that it's because of wickedness that they have done before and nobody should help them. We should just leave them to suffer. That speaks to who you are. It doesn't speak to who the person is. What does it matter what someone did yesterday or 20 years ago? If they're thirsty today and you do not give them a glass of water to drink when you can, and you say, oh, you're not giving them because of what they did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, yesterday, what does that make you in relating to another human being? All it doesn't make is make you add to the desperation and the wickedness that is in this world, because that is how you relate to another person. Judge them by the deeds you probably don't even know that they did or didn't do. You hear something and you're ready to run with it because it sounds salacious. But we need to look at every single person, as a human being. And wherever you see someone in need, it doesn't matter what kind of need the person has. We need to find the humanity within ourselves to help them. And I am really distressed and still trying to figure out what kind of assistance can be given to these people, even in terms of just getting them to navigate the public transportation system. The sad thing is we don't really have a public transportation system because it's private operators who are providing this public service. So it's not like there is a government department that you can appeal to put in some kind of something to assist people with disabilities and the elderly and those who need a little special attention on the road. There is no such authority to appeal to. You have a council that deals with the disabled. They have no authority. The traffic department, they have no authority. They are left on their own. It's depressing and it's distressing to think that in our countries, and I'm not even talking about in the world, right here in the OECS, right here in the Caribbean, in our countries, that we are not able, and let me change that, not that we are not able, we do not seek to do better for those among us who are really in need. But we run around making a big fuss for those who are not in need, seeking to help them to better themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in doing that, because these things don't have to be exclusive of each other, you don't have to not help someone because you're helping someone else. So put your policies in place, do whatever you have to do to build businesses and to create opportunities for people to work and everything else. But do not leave people behind who are not able to help themselves. You have the blind, you have the infirmed, you have the elderly, you have this group of people among us that seem to be forgotten. The society is blind to them, and people in general blind to them. They don't see them. And because of that, they're out there, they're hurting, they're struggling, and there are people who can help. And we really need to look into ourselves and find a way to help these folks. And if my host is there, he can rejoin me at this point. Because I've told my story. I've shared that story with you. And I don't know how many of you out there have had experiences with persons with disabilities or with the elderly. And it's a daily struggle for these people, a daily struggle. And really, I don't know, it distresses me personally. Even today, weeks later, every time I go on the road, I'm looking out for him or I'm looking out for someone else who is in need of assistance in that way. Every single time I go on the road, I'm looking out for someone because there are so many people out there who really, really just need someone to be kind to them and to help them out, to stretch a hand to help them along life's journey. The journey is difficult as it is. And when you have added pressures like a disability to deal, with, when you have these added pressures, I tell you, I can only imagine, I can only think what it is like because I don't know. I really do not know. I can only think what it is, and I can only do what I can to make it easier for someone at that point when I come in contact with them, when I touch them. So my appeal to you today is to touch a life in a positive way when you go out, when you go about your daily business. Don't be blind to the people around you who are in need. Don't look at them with scorn and scoff at them and feel like they're taking up space in society if you do see them. Because sometimes people they don't even see them to ignore them. They just don't see them at all. But we really need to make the change in our lives so that we can make the change in the societies that we live in. It's harsh, it's cold, it's brutal out there. And there are people so in need. You know, we think of the Bible story of the Good Samaritan, and I don't know how many of you out there listening and watching who familiar with this, with the Bible or with the Bible story about the Good Samaritan, where the man was beaten and left for dead by the roadside, and all the priests and rabbis and the uppity people in society passed in there. And the one person who stopped to assist him was himself seen as an outcast in the society, a Samaritan, someone of low repute, someone that society really didn't regard. But that Samaritan stopped to assist that man who was beat up and left on the side of the road for dead because he understood what it is to be in need and to have a need and to have someone assist you. And that is what we need to do in the world that we live in. It's cold out there. In my conversation with that gentleman, I learned so much from him. It was exhilarating. We chatted, we laughed. He told me things that I never would have known otherwise. You know, and it was such a mixture of experiences for me. The high point when I saw the young men assisting him. High point when he told me, oh, when you get to the traffic light, turn right. And I was just knocked over because I couldn't figure out how he knew where I was, but he knew. He could see in his own way where he was and where he was going. He could see. So I thank you all for listening to my story and look forward to hearing how you react to it. But I don't know where my host is. He has abandoned me, and I need him to come back at this point so we can share some of your comments, hear what you had to say, and how you deal with people that you come across in your daily life. What kind of experiences have you had? You know, I can see, but I can't put on the screen. So I'm just going to share some of what you have been saying here in your comments. And I see someone, if I can just pick up a few. Aura says, wow, hats off to these young men. Hats off to them indeed. indeed. Doc King Howard said, this is the way we treat our elderly people. Absolutely. And even in these COVIDious times, you hear people saying, oh, the elderly, they are more affected by COVID. And I've even heard people suggest that it's okay, just let the elderly die, leave them and let them die because they are more susceptible to COVID-19. Leave the bright young people, treat them, give them the attention, let them live. But when the old people are infected with COVID-19, just leave them, don't bother. They have lived their lives already, just leave them. And I've heard people make these comments on radio, in public space, people in positions of authority, people that others in society see as role models and look up to. And they sit there in a public space and make these kinds of comments about the elderly. You're just supposed to discard them. Don't bother to try and save them in these COVIDious times if they become infected. They've lived already. They can die now. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Angela says, touching story, Miss Bev. Can't believe this is how persons with disabilities are treated in Grenada. Angela, yes, it's real. It happens. And we really, really need to do something about it. Marceline says, man has lost their humanity. That's exactly what it is, Marceline. People have lost their humanity. Doug says, sad how we go about life. And the people who helped bring us here, now we kick them to the curb and leave them to die. We are really sick to the bone. So true. Camille says, yes, Bev, that's how it is. When one of the senses is lost, the others are developed. It's a pity that so many people in our society are mentally blind. Yep, so true. T.F. Richards said, Bev, whilst I work at the CID years ago, I interacted with the blind at the White Cane Industries, and one of them would always say, Officer, don't worry about me. Officer, don't worry about me. I could see better than you. And now that you've gone through this, I would agree with you when you say that we have sight, but we are more blind than them. We as a society are blind, civilly, politically, morally, etc. So true, T.F. Richards. So very true. We are blind. No exceptions to the rules for the old people. I guess they wouldn't get old or sick or even disabled. And I think, Doug, maybe here you're referring to the police ticketing the bus drivers for picking up these people or when they're not at the bus stop. And it's true. But at the same time, other infractions are committed and they get a buy, The police don't bother to ticket them. They get a buy. And you really, really wonder what is happening, why the police would realize what is happening. And in this case, when you really need the police to assist the bus drivers in getting these elderly and these infirm people to their destination, they give them a ticket. Shirley Calendar said, so good. I am in Barbados, and one night I met an elderly lady struggle to get to a bus, and I asked her if she needed help. She then informed me that her sight was bad. So I told her, hold on to me because my hands were full. And incidentally, oh dear, where did that go? And incidentally, she was going on the same bus and was so grateful. It took nothing. Exactly, it takes nothing. Elliot says, Bev, yes, that has been the new health slogan since COVID. I had a friend whose mother was in the hospital sick, and because of want for space, they sent her home, saying she's already lived her life. Oh, these people are selfish. Selfish is an understatement. It really is an understatement. Alwyn says, we repaired a hernia for a man many years ago, a coup, as we call it. He went to the mountains and worked carrying a sack that was like a football with all his bowels in it. his appendix was 21 inches long and sclerosized like rubber. 8 liters of fluid was removed from his bowels. Oh dear, these things are running all over my screen here. That's a story I would like to finish reading. Yes, where did it go? Where did it go? I'm sorry, Alwyn, if I get back to that, I'll finish reading it about that man that you did the operation on, because that sounds like something we really need to hear. But Alwyn says again, we make no adjustments for disability at all in the Caribbean. Once you have a deficit of any sense, you are discarded, regarded as lesser and not valued. We promote it too by making people too dependent and not giving them the means to continue. Losing a foot doesn't stop you working and earning, but you will need a prosthesis. Where in the scheme of things do we prepare for this in our society? And even second to that, Alwyn, we don't even have, for the most part, we don't even have buildings and facilities, not even public buildings, that are equipped to deal with people in wheelchair, to deal with people who are using crutches, to deal with the visually impaired who need to have, we just don't even think of these persons in building and constructing anywhere. The sidewalks, nobody with in a wheelchair can get around on the sidewalks. I don't know for anywhere else, but I can tell you for Grenada, if you're in a wheelchair, don't try to navigate the sidewalk because you can't. It's not built for that. Absolutely no thought was ever given to accommodating a wheelchair on a sidewalk. So, Ora says, say what you want about America, but America takes care of the disabled. There is special transportation that they can call to take them to the doctor, to the grocery store. Then they wait, or when they're ready, they call to pick them up. We need something like that in our societies. And that's why I made the point that the public transportation system, it's not really public, because it's the private operators who provide this service. So I don't know if something could not be worked out where within that structure, that public-private structure, there is some sort of allocation, some sort of allowances made to deal with the elderly and those with physical disabilities who need to get around. Alban says it's all over, Bev. It's all over. And it's sad that we as people, we as a society, it's so sad. It breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart. Digby said, thanks for sharing this experience, inspiring and invaluable to stimulate and fertility good practices. Our culture needs such change in our new norm. How do I reach this gentleman? I will inbox you after and I'll try and see if I can get some kind of contact for you. Elliot says, okay, I think I read that one already. And okay, I think I am back to this story that I was reading from Elliot about the man that they write. And he had continued to say there was 20 is his appendix 21 inches long and sclerosized like rubber. 8 liters of fluid was removed from his bowels, replaced. But after he could walk upright, he came back to us asking to go on poor relief. He got annoyed with me when I said, we made you better. You should be proud to go to work now. Yes, and we will always come across those where are people who do not want to help themselves. And I don't really bother too much about people who don't want to help themselves. I try to focus on those who really need help, who would love to help themselves, because this blind gentleman that I shared my story about, he was out there trying to work. He's a masseuse, he has a skill. And despite the fact that he knows that the cruise ships were not coming, the tourists were not there, he had that knowledge, but he has his skill, and he still went out trying to find work to do, even though he knew the odds were stacked against him. But he said, I have to get out there. I have to see what I can do. So he was out there trying to help himself, trying to do something. So those are the people that I empathize with, that I feel compassion for. Those who do not want to work and sitting waiting for handouts, that's a different story. Yeah. Cherie said they are human beings. That's why I love volunteering and giving back. Eunice said, Beverly, thanks for sharing this story. We never know when we will be in this situation. And that is so true. A disability can happen at the flick of a switch, you know. You can just lose a hand, lose a foot, lose your sight, lose your hearing, just like that. And you don't even know. It can be from sickness, or it can be from an accident, and you find yourself with a disability just with a flick of a switch. So it's not something that you should look at and say it can't happen to you. I've seen situations where a gentleman who lost his hand, he was leaning against a tree, and someone with a cutlass did something stupid, and the next thing you know, the man's hand was gone. He wasn't in a fight. He was not in a place where he shouldn't be. Nothing like that. Just an unfortunate situation. He ended up with a disability. He lost a hand. So these things can happen through sickness, through accident. Any of us can become disabled at any time. So we really need to pay attention and really do what we can to help others who are in this situation right now. So folks, like I said, I have been abandoned by my host. I don't know where he went. He hasn't returned, but I have come to the end of my story, and I have shared some of your thoughts on it. And I see Guevara says, you can fall down your stairs at home, and that's it. Happened to a friend of mine 2 weeks ago. Exactly. Precisely so. You just never know. You just never know. Elliot says, Bev, there's a service in St. Vincent that transport people from the hospital who can't walk properly. So why can't the government provide that special service for the disabled? There are many questions to ask, and we have to ask these questions and try to get some answers. And more than that, try to get some help, because these people are out there every day. They are struggling and they need help. It seems simple to us getting from point A to point B. Most people get up, they jump in the car, they go about their business, they don't even think about it. Others get up, they go, they jump on a bus, they go about their business, they don't even think about it. But then you have this group of people, and it may be a small group, who get into the bus stop, like the gentleman that I assisted. He needed help just to get to the bus stop. To get on a bus, he needs help. Traveling for them is not an easy thing. And whatever we can do to assist, we should. We really should. The world is cold and cruel enough as it is. So wherever we can warm it up a bit and soften it up a bit, let's do that. Thanks for sharing this morning with me, folks. Thanks for your input. Thanks for sharing your stories. We learn a lot from each other, and we should always, always look out for each other as we go about our daily business. We just marked Emancipation Day, and it's one of the things we should free ourselves from: inhumanity and insensitivity and the things that make us less human. Let's gravitate towards the things that make us more human, the warmth, the love that we need to share with each other. So have a great day, folks. Go out, and whatever you do today, see if you can help someone in need, find someone in need, and make it a better day and a brighter day for someone. Bye now, and until next time, I'll see you again, whenever that may be.